it unfolded over months and months, 16 months. So we're here, we're gathered here, thank you very much, to reboot your compassion, simply because the numbers are too staggering to service for any country alone. This ongoing crisis on this ground zero of climate emergency is really about many multiple complex challenges. If most of the videos you saw, the later parts, the inundated swathes of land are from the south, which is my home. And if you can find ground in the south, dry land, then it is hard to find the means for shelter, to get the shelter to many areas, let alone food, health, and hygiene, because there are so many in distress from the trauma of displacement, death, and now, of course, disease. So just for context, and you did see some context there in comparisons, are these apples, are these oranges, 33 million people affected are 7 million more than the entire population of Australia. Imagine rescuing, feeding, sheltering, resettling, sometimes what feels like 3 countries or one big, it's beyond the resources, available resources in many ways for any of us, I think. So we have been working round the clock, flat out through the aftershocks, which still continue, but just to pick up the pieces, honestly, ladies and gentlemen, we will literally need a new coalition of the willing. It can be done for wars, so it can be done to save lives. In the monstrous downpour that inundated more than 1/3 of my country, approximately 1,700 people have lost their lives. Again, the numbers keep coming in. And close to 13,000 are injured. 7.9 million are still displaced. And women and children make up 70% of the 33 million affected. 1/3 of all recorded deaths and injuries are children. We are still in the longest rescue and relief and life-saving phase, crossing 16 nightmarish weeks. This is principally because the flooding is of 3 different types: flash flooding, hail torrents, and the monster monsoon have all clustered in one era-defining climate disaster to create new records of extreme weather and water volumes, volatility, and unpredictability. 34 districts are still crisis affected, with 46,000 square kilometers 16 weeks later in fluid conditions, no pun on water, which just again for perspective is more than Switzerland's entire physical area, and an estimated 20.6 people, as defined by this response document, are in need. This number, again, is more than the size of Switzerland and Portugal's population combined. These are not statistics. You saw that. They're not just statistics. These are real people on the ground whose eyes are still vacant from the shock that they faced, because overnight they've been turned into poster children of extreme vulnerability, with futures that are entirely precarious, and particularly for women, who are layered with another burden of compounded social fragility, including campsite predations. So with 11 districts still underwater, it is quite surreal to see the Pakistan Navy deployed in this inland terrain to service those who have survived. We've never had the Pakistan Navy inside the country, but it's had to. Many still are seeking hubs for, land hubs for clean water, food, medical assistance, and tragically, even dry land in the south, in my province, to bury their dead. There wasn't room or time or space to bury their dead. With more than 1,400 health facilities damaged, I will leave Dr. Tedros, who's been kind enough to come here, to tell you more about the risk exposure of millions pushed into fresh peril by the health emergency now menacing the country, because large swathes of the country, particularly in the south, which is lower than sea level now, are still festering under huge swampy lakes of water which has nowhere to drain. 8.2 million people require urgent medical services, while 4% of the disaster-affected population is actually pregnant. We are urgently in need of life-saving medicines, among other things, and that is all part of your appeal document, and I'm sure you can see what else can be sent to the ground. So, Excellencies, for us and for these people that you saw, my people, it is a real race against time. Winter is also coming. Left to the mercy of the open sky, shelters have been made available for 598,000, while over 7.9 million are still scrambling for dry land. As you saw that the highways have become the dry land where they pitch tarpaulins, and many of these highways are inundated, which we desperately need. As cold weather is very, very near. 4 million people live in areas where temperatures reach sub-zero. And even in the warmest affected areas, the mercury typically falls below 10 degrees centigrade. So winterized tents and goods for the winter, to have them survive another bitter winter is very much the need of the hour. Nutrition needs to need a scaled up response, as 7.1 million people are still in acute need. And in this appeal, you have 3.9 million targeted, but most priorities are identified for severe and acute malnutrition, with FAO surveys suggesting 9.4, but even more million acres of standing crops inundated and affected. This will directly put at risk for 14.6 million people who live and work very close to nature in the line of a food sector and agriculture crisis. Livelihoods will continue to face severe aftershocks because the cattle, etc., are all drowned. So 15.4 million people will be pushed into hard-scrabble poverty. More. There are already many people. So relief efforts have also been slowed down because the fury of the floods have ripped out over 13,000 kilometers of roads and torn down 440 bridges all over the country, north to south. Railway lines are still not fully restored. They're running trains which stop in the middle because the rolling stock is there, but the lines are not. So I'm here, of course, to ask for the burden to be shared, meeting the needs on the ground, even for the relief phases beyond the overstretched capacities of any one country, especially one that has already been paying for climate losses at about 9.1% of our GDP. These are UN numbers. Our export crops are almost all wiped out, particularly in the province of Sindh, which is half the breadbasket of the country. And we will even need to now import huge quantums of food after this flood to feed our population. Given the global energy shortages, our import bills are critically impacted, especially as we compete with far richer countries to pay for clean gas on the international market. We're competing with bids, and very often we are outbid on the international market. So energy is going to be a second crisis. No, one of the many. With debt payments looming and with the farmers and other impacted sectors already demanding loss and damage, as I left Islamabad, the groups of farmers, large swathes of them, the ones who have managed to get on their feet, mostly in Punjab, not in the province of Sindh, which is still not on its feet, are demanding loss and damage compensations from the federal government, completely strapped, including support on agriculture inputs